It is mobile crane time, and in this review we're looking at the Tadano ATF 60G-3. It comes in a Tadano branded box, and as we can see it's made by WSI Models. This is a limited edition model and it's in the colours of Schot, which is a Dutch crane hire company. Out of the box come the factory sealed trays, and after some knife work you can see that the model is well packed. And yes, it comes with quite a few parts. As usual, we'll set the crane up for the road first, and we need to separate the top piece of counterweight because that can't be carried on board without the crane exceeding its weight limit. For transport, the counterweight is carried just behind the cab, and a nice touch is that there is a holder for a single line hook, and we can place the hook inside it. Next, the crane does come with a fly jib, and that can be fitted on the side of the boom. We always like to stick things in holes, and in this case it's easy because there's a steel pin which secures the jib in place. After that there are two replica jacks which rest in the counterweight at the back. Before we start, just a reminder that you can see a lot more about models on the Cranes Etc. website, and the link to it is in the video description below. Also, if you want to know where you can buy scale models, then you can click on links on the website, including those in the shopping mall. And listed here are dealers that sell models in countries across the world. Starting underneath, there's a fixed ladder under the cab, and as you can see there's some really nice detailing of the transmission and suspension parts. The road wheels have a good tread pattern. The cab has got beacon lights on the roof, and there's a stalk for a camera and the usual mirrors. At the front the Schot name is nicely printed, and there's a tying on loop. Other pleasing details include the steps up to the cab and the modelled door handle. There's also some nice sharp graphics. Although it's hard to see, the interior detail is very good. And moving to the outrigger beams, there are nice chevron graphics on the beams themselves. And the other components of the outrigger are also modelled, including plastic spreader plates. Behind the cab there are nice textured surfaces, as well as other modelled components. There are some nice small graphics, and in addition to the nicely coloured wheels, the tyres have also got branding on the sidewalls. At the back there's a beacon light, and the counterweight block has all the separate slabs delineated. The crane cab has got metal grab rails, and a nice door handle and footplate. The detail inside the cab is also of a high standard. Behind the cab there are textured steps, and the walkway is textured too. Other nice details include the big toothed slewing ring and the warning lights at the front. The telescopic sections have Schot written on each one, and at the boom head there are separate metal pulleys, and the model has a proper tying off point and also a hoist safety cut-off chain. The hook is metal and it has some tiny graphics, and a small load is included. The fly jib is a nice metal lattice with metal pulleys. The crane is on its back and it looks like it's Schot, and actually it is a Schot crane, and here it's only resting. There is independent steering of each of the axles so you can replicate any of the modes of the real crane, and there is also sprung suspension on each axle. It is a little bit stiff, but it is there and it does work. Out on the Cranes Etc. Superhighway the crane does roll, but the review model had a slightly loose front axle which wanted to go its own direction. Let's set the steering and see what happens, and we'll go for a tight curve. And with that the model is well behaved and makes a reasonable attempt at sharp cornering. The outriggers are very nice and the pads clip in for transport. But as we're now on site, let's pull out the outrigger beam, and we can wind down the smoothed faced piston and centralise the pad and put a spreader plate underneath. Fast forward and all the outriggers are set, and the model can pose wheels free. On the crane there is a fold-up handrail which can be raised for working mode, but it was a little bit loose on the review model, so we need to refix it in position. After that we can release the hook from its travelling position, and that allows us to stick our boom up. The hydraulic ram that controls it has no friction, but you secure it at the extension you want using an Allen key on a grub screw. And after just a bit of initial stickiness, we can rotate the crane around. A nice touch on the model are that there are 4 access ladders which can be rotated down, and they add to the realistic appearance. At this point we'll add on the piece of counterweight that we couldn't carry on the crane, and that makes up the full weight of 13 tons on the real crane. And then we can slowly rotate the crane around in order to be able to attach the counterweight. Before we swing it right round, we need to remove the screw jacks that we placed temporarily. And once everything's in position, we add back the screw jacks and we can tighten them up using the winch key that's supplied with the model. With the counterweight wound up and clear of the deck, we can rotate the crane around. Included with the model is this block as a load, and that makes it easier to keep some tension on the hook if you're using the hoist, and that's probably more important on the way down than on the way up. The hoist on this model is actually quite nice to use, and that's because the winch drum has a positive action brake. You use the key to push in slightly against the pressure of a spring, and then the drum easily turns. Telescoping the boom is easy. You just pull out the sections and there are locking points at roughly 50% and 100% extension. And if you want some additional height, you can pin on the fly jib and run the rope over the guide wheel to a single line hook. There's also a ratchet that allows you to set 2 different angles of jib. Time for a genuine imitation real-life test, and here we're going to carry out a load test of the crane. Firstly we'll measure the boom extension, and that's about 37 centimeters. Then we pick the right load chart for a 13-ton counterweight, and the boom extension scales to 18.4 meters. Next let's measure the radius, and that's about 20 centimeters, and that scales up to a radius of 10 meters. And from the load chart we get a safe working load of 14.4 tons. So here is the crane, and it's already lifting a test load frame, and the weight of it scales up to around 10 tons. So let's add another 10 tons to make 20, and the model easily surpasses the 14.4 tons of the real crane. We might expect the crane to be designed for a load of double the safe working load, and now the model's carrying 30 tons, and it's still rock solid. Let's add another 10 tons to make a total load of 40 tons, and still the crane is not tipping over or collapsing. In for a penny, in for a pound, let's add another 10 tons to make 50 tons. And at this point we see that the tipping load has been exceeded. So the conclusion of all this is that the model crane is very strong and easily beats the scaled capacity of the real crane. This is an attractive version of the Tadano ATF 60G-3 crane. It has a more detailed appearance than the version in Tadano colours, and that's all coupled with some nice functionality. This is an attractive looking small crane model, and overall it is rated as excellent.